So without further ado, I'd like to introduce both artists, and then I'll let you sort of pass the mic back and forth collaboratively. Rick Braveheart is, as usual, behind the camera. So Rick, please come up here. And Sue King, if you would join us as well. And I'll just hand it over to the two of you. Thank you so much. Please help me welcome the artist.
A glass of wine in your hand.
There you go. There you go.
I would love to thank you all for coming. This was, I know for some people, kind of a long distance drive. I had people from Bellefontaine and I met people from Pataskala. But it is an honor to be here at Dublin Arts Council with Sue. Sue and I share something in common. We have been artists in residence in national parks, and it is an honor to do this. And so for us to be able to bring these images to our community, because Sue lives in Lancaster, I live in Columbus, is a joy. And this is probably the most beautiful facility I could imagine to have the work in. So first of all, thank you, Dublin Arts Council, for hosting us, and thank you all for joining us. Let me give it to Sue for a second so she can say something.
Well, so one question we get is how we know each other. In fact, I got a request from Mesa Verde National Park and wanted to know how I knew Rick. And I guess the reason I know Rick is because I went to Mesa Verde National Park to be an artist in residence and didn't know anybody who had ever done that. So I Googled it, like a good artist does, and whose name pops up at Rick's, who lives right in Columbus, Ohio. So I just sent him off an email, never thinking that he would even answer it or even see it. And he was very kind enough to answer and respond and give me some tips on what to do in the parks. And then about a year later, I had an exhibition up at the Grandview Library, and he generously came and gave me a lot of positive remarks about that. And we just came up with this idea after we met each other because we had so much in common. So I guess one of the things that makes our art a little bit different is Rick does these beautiful, majestic works of our national parks about the landscape. And I'm a social worker, and I take a little bit different view, and Rick has been a social worker. But I like to honor the cultural aspects of our national parks. So you'll see a lot of figurative work, especially a lot of Native American pieces that kind of gets overlooked in our public school historical presentation of our country. So that is really important to me.
And I spend a lot of my time doing history of the parks. I've been to about 106 national parks. Not national parks, national land. So for those of you that don't know, we have over 400 national parks, monuments, recreation areas, which I never knew existed till a few years ago, where you can go boating and skiing. And but they are wonderful gifts to all of us. We are all part owners in this incredible gift that America has, and it's quite unique compared to other countries around the world. But Sue and I, for the work in here, this is all work for the most part from our residency. So you apply to be an artist in a national park. Sometimes they have 300-400 people apply, and they pick one or sometimes two in a year. So it's a great honor to be selected. And then they provide housing where we will live in little cabins? Hogans, yes. Listening to things scurry across the floor at night. This is not a joke, yes. Or bears crawling through the window, which I've had happen. But it is also the gift that the Park Service gives us of being able to be immersed in the land and being able to know the land the way most people don't get to. A lot of people, when you go to a national park, you may be there for a day, maybe if you're lucky 2 days. Sometimes you're on a bus and you're just kind of like waving to the bears going by. But we get to live there for 4 or 6 weeks at a time, and so you really get to learn about the land and its beauty. So some of these pieces, people have been asking me, well, like, I could never take a picture like that. Well, if you spent 6 weeks every morning waiting for the sunrise, you might get a beautiful sunrise, And just to let you know, because somebody asked me about this, I was never in a national park till I was 40 years old. I'm sorry to say, but I never knew there was a national park until I was 40 years old. And it's because of my wife, who can't be here tonight, who got me into the first national park. I used to do a lot of assignments. I'd go to Switzerland and Italy and photograph there. And that's what everybody thought was beautiful until she took me to Grand Canyon. and I never left the United States since. Because this is a small representation of the beauty that is all around us, that I get the gift to capture.
So a lot of people want to know how you get to be an artist in resident. Maybe some of your students would be interested in that as well. You can Google. I love Googling. You can find out, there's actually National Park Service has a website with all the artist residencies listed on it. Each park kind of does their own thing. They have their own rules. They have their own length of time that you can stay. Each park wants something in return for the amazing time that you get to spend there, and that is a piece of artwork that you have 1 year to create for the park, and that you either give to them or they have copyright rights to the image itself. So to get accepted, you have to have a resume, a portfolio of images. You have to complete a proposal and write an essay, usually answering at least 3 to 4 basic questions on why you should be selected to be in the park. As Rick said, there's hundreds of people that apply for those positions, and then they have a group of people that decide who is going to be selected, and usually those are other artists that work or live in the area, as well as the park personnel. So it's not just the staff picking people. Once you get to the park, you do get to live inside that park for 2 to 6 weeks. You get park housing, and it does vary. We've both lived in that Hogan at different times. I guess one of the most challenging ones I have, where I shared housing with 2 students who were in their 20s for 2 weeks. That was interesting. I tried not to be their mom. But I bribed them with cookies and ice cream, so they did enjoy that. And then while you're there, you have the amazing ability, like Rick said, to see things that no one else gets to see. What I noticed about some of the parks, especially the big ones like Mesa Verde, people come in huge buses. They jump off the bus, they run down and look at the overlook, they get back on the bus, and then they leave. So I think Rick does this as well. I make an effort to try and hike every trail, and once you get on that trail, you see no one. You literally have it to yourself. So I take a lot of photographs, which I use in my work, and I do a lot of sketching. I do design work for stencils. You'll notice a lot of stencil work on my pieces. Some of those are sketches I did in museums of Native American symbology or traditional artworks. And then I try and create a piece that really incorporates some basic social work principles, person in the environment. So that's when I leave, that's what I am trying to achieve.
Let's see. So if you haven't, as you tour this exhibit, you're going to see a wide variety of media. There are photographs on metal. There's Sue's amazing quilts. Right in the back of this room is a piece we created together, which is a piece that uses one of my photographs that then Sue's incorporated into this amazing quilt. In the back room, which is the opposite side of this building just keeps on going and going. It's incredible. You'll find a video, and if you just tap the monitor, it'll start. And it's a music video that a good friend of mine, his name is Ronald Roybal, who did all the music for Dances with Wolves. He's a Navajo flute player. He created the music for that music video that you'll see, which is of Badlands National Park. So we have all together, Sue and I have found so many different ways to express the beauty of our land in ways that we hope will appeal to everybody in some way or another. And this is a great environment to do it. Sue?
So I guess I'm wondering if anybody has any questions. Yes.
Can you give a brief explanation of encaustic waxing?
Oh, you use that on your legs? Actually, I've used it on my arms by mistake, and it works. So yes, there's no encaustics here because we didn't have enough room to display it. But I'll take photographs, and I will make a contact print. So I take a negative, and I actually make a photograph, the print of it. I'll take that print, and I'll apply it with a special chemical onto a piece of board, like maple board. So then you peel the photograph off and throw it away. So now you've got kind of like a photograph on a paper board. Then you take this fancy hairdryer, which would burn the hair right off your head. But you slowly paint that. I melt big vats of wax with tints like browns and reds, and I will heat the board to warm it up, and then I'll paint this wax onto the surface and use some tints to add a little color. But the beauty of wax on top of a photograph is, in a way, even though it's a three-dimensional subject, it's only really two dimensions you're looking at. But to add the depth of wax, I'll put on often 16 to 25 coats of wax. So it builds up this depth. So when you look at it, you're going like, whoa. And that's Encaustic. So it's wax, and it's
I wish you had some here.
well, I took one to the Columbus Art Festival last year. It got to be 104 degrees, and it was very soft. Somebody asked to look at it, and I picked it up and went, whoa, no. So thank you for asking, guys. Maybe next year.
Good, thank you.
Anybody else have a question?
Students?
I do have a question. This one's for Sue, actually. I'm very inspired by your representation of Native Americans. Actually, I'm in another class that is about visual art and social justice in the United States. So I kind of wanted to know, how do you hope your art, what kind of precedent do you hope that your art can set for artists who are interested in representing Native people in the United States, along with other misrepresented groups who are interested in this kind of art form?
Okay, so being a social worker, social justice obviously is a big component of that. So I try and be really culturally sensitive to the Native people. I do not do any photographs myself of Native peoples because that is really not appreciated at all without asking permission. So I don't know if you saw the camera in the back room that Rick uses. That's similar to what Edward Curtis used to use to photograph folks. So I use his images from the Library of Congress because most of them are not copyrighted, and I will use those images in this setting. I also try and do a lot of reading. I try and understand the culture that I'm representing. I try and talk to those people. Some of the residencies I've done, like at Agate Fossil Beds, I got to speak with a Lakota Sioux gentleman who told me about his history and why it was important to him. And he had been an actor in Hollywood, and he was hoping to make a movie about Crazy Horse. So I just listen to what they have to tell me. I'm getting ready to go out to Petrified Forest National Monument, and my presentation, or what I'm studying there, is Hopi artist Fred Cabote, who did a lot of the murals at Grand Canyon National Park, also at the Painted Desert Inn there. So I've read again about what is acceptable as far as representation. So I try and be as culturally sensitive as I can to the subject matter, and be aware of that I am not of their culture, and I don't presume to be.
Good question. Good question.
Anyone else?
Wow, look at all these people. That's great.
If there are no other questions, we just thank you all for coming.